What's up, you damn dirty horror fans? Pete here from the Lasser Cast, or should I call it Planet of the Lasser Cast Apes? I don't remember what the fuck I made. But anyway, we got a new event coming up right now where Danny and I, my good co-host over there, DrZaiusGOD himself, rocking a Dr. Zaius shirt, are going to talk about the Planet of the Apes films. And this time around, we are talking about the newest one, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Danny, how many items do you have that have Dr. Zaius on them?
I think I have like two action figures. One is still in the case. The other is out on the old horror bookshelf that I used to record in front of. And I think I just have this shirt that my sister got me one year for a birthday or Father's Day or something. So, right. Yeah. My attachment to the Dr. Zaius name, as much as I love the original Planet of the Apes, is actually, of course, The Simpsons and the Troy McClure musical.
Right.
Dr. Zaius, can I play the piano anymore? Of course you can, but I couldn't before. And that kind of inspired me and my friends to go and watch the original movie. And that became like one of our like favorite movies to watch almost on repeat. I actually rewatched it last night on Hulu. Hulu has the entire Planet of the Apes franchise as of right now. They have the 5 original films. They have the Tim Burton, Mark Wahlberg remake from the early 2000s. And then they have, I believe they still have Rise, Dawn, and War, which are the 3 films that lead up to Kingdom. So as we begin recording this morning, I look out my window and I could just say, what a wonderful day.
Yes. Well, it's a good time to be a Planet. I'm just going to go on Hulu. Probably watched a lot of those movies with my daughter. We just watched, just me and my friend Jay, we saw Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I know Danny watched it on like Wednesday. Like he said, there's 10 Planet of the Apes movies, including a reboot by Tim Burton. And then this one is actually the 4th installment in the Planet of the Apes reboot franchise. So that series in itself, like that trilogy, is a fucking solid trilogy.
I think that it, for a while, because I think War, which was the 3rd part of it, came out in 2016. And I think for a long time, it kind of laid dormant as like everybody's low key best trilogy, best modern trilogy.
Yeah.
But for some reason, those movies didn't get the appreciation. I think it has to do with the timing of them. Rise came out in 2011. I think War and Dawn and War come out in like 14 and 16. They're all within that like 5 to 6 year period. And I think that was during the absolute peak of the MCU.
Yeah.
That was during phases 1 and 2 and the beginning of phase 3 of the MCU, where they were not missing at all. And I think that when people thought about blockbuster popcorn franchises, they thought namely about the MCU during that period. Now, Kingdom comes out at a perfect time, I think, because the MCU has been on a multi-year, I don't even want to say decline, even though that's probably the correct word in terms of their movies aren't getting the box office receipts, and they're not getting the critical reception that they had been getting up through, I believe, Endgame. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that like to retroactively shit on the MCU now who are just full of shit. But when everything up to Endgame was pretty much either, at worst, it was a solid comic book movie to at their peaks, they were some of the best movies of those years. Black Panther, let's not forget, was nominated for Best Picture. So, and Endgame is the 2nd highest grossing film of all time, and it would still be number 1 if Avatar didn't go back into theaters last year. So, the MCU since Endgame, which was 2019, has been on kind of a multi-year. There have been great movies, but most of them, the series on Disney Plus, have not always hit.
Yeah.
Some of the movies have not hit, and I think that people have been looking for an alternative popcorn franchise.
Yeah.
I think calling back to comic books, comic book movies, as you know, the head of Comic Books Transformed, you know this.
Boom.
The guy who really made his name with the Planet of the Apes sequels, Matt Reeves, went on to perhaps his most critical acclaim for doing The Batman. Now,
Yes.
I'll argue anyone that Dawn and War of the Planet of the Apes are better than The Batman.
I would too.
But The Batman made everybody get very excited.
Right.
And I think that people retroactively went, oh, Matt Reeves did those Planet of the Apes movies. Let's check those out.
Yeah.
And there's kind of been a reappraising of that reboot trilogy. And I think people are starting to come around to the idea that those three are fairly epic movies and that it is, you know, obviously we're talking today about a part 4, but it's set in the distant future. So it's not like, you know, they're ruining a great trilogy by adding an unnecessary 4th movie.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it feels like that trilogy is a contained trilogy. It's the Caesar trilogy. And then this new like start of a trilogy franchise, whatever, is set in that universe, set hundreds of years in the future, and it's going to be its own thing. Yes, it's going to connect back to it, but it's going to be its own thing.
Yeah.
And I love that trilogy has been reappraised, because I thought back in 2011, when I was not on a YouTube channel and I was not writing for Geeks of Doom and I was just, you know, posting on Facebook, my end of year list for 2011 had Rise of the Planet of the Apes as my favorite movie of that year. And Dawn and War were very high up on my lists as well.
Yeah.
I have argued, because Matt Reeves did not direct Rise, Rupert Wyatt did. I have a short review. I did a non-spoiler short of Kingdom Wednesday night when I got home from the screening, and yesterday I posted a short for Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I'm going to do one for Dawn and for War, all to build up before this. This is probably going to go up Monday morning, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So by the end of this weekend, by the time everybody's watching this, we'll have YouTube shorts up for the reboot trilogy, Rise, Dawn, and War. And I don't know about you, but when I saw Rise in the movie theater, the moment that Caesar speaks goes down as one of the great movie theater moments of my lifetime.
Yeah.
Like, the audible gasp is something that doesn't happen in movie theaters that often.
Yeah.
And the two loudest that I can remember are the ending of The Departed.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
Which I will not yet say what it is for
Don't
those
spoil
weirdos who have not seen The Departed yet.
One of my favorites, yeah.
But the other is Caesar grabbing Draco Malfoy's arm and going, no. And just the theater going,
yeah.
And the realization that this movie is about to take the fuck off and start a franchise. And I absolutely love it. So I just love the original movie. Is one of my all-time favorites. It gave me the nickname that I've had since high school.
Oh my God.
The DrZaiusGOD name comes from my first AOL screen name back when I was 17 years old, and I just turned 42. So,
oh my Lord.
Yes. So that has been a big part of my life, the Dr. Zaius name, for 25 years. And the original film, I actually have never seen the original sequels from Beneath. What? I know. So I actually am about 30 minutes in to Beneath the Planet of the Apes. on Hulu now.
Wait. I know I'm usually the one that's like, hey, I haven't seen this, and it kind of blows your mind. But you're telling me that your name that you've had for 25 years, DrZaiusGOD, and you've not watched the sequels to the original Planet of the Apes movie?
You have to remember, when I first saw it, it's so much easier now when things are on a streaming service and you could just click on the buttons.
Yeah.
In 1999, 2000, I remember like the local video store by my house was kind of dying out, and the Blockbuster was not carrying the 1970 to 74 Planet of the Apes sequels. So it was either like go to Suncoast Video and buy a box set for like $99, or like see them when you can.
Yeah.
And I just never got to see them. I will say, and bringing up Suncoast Video, I'm having a lot of flashbacks. I fucking hated that they released one of the first VHS DVDs for this movie that got put out with the new sleeve, had the fucking Statue of Liberty on it, which is why don't you just make a Usual Suspects VHS box that says starring Kevin Spacey as Kaiser Sose?
Kaiser Sose, yeah.
Yeah. And spoil the greatest like surprise ending in movie history.
Yeah. They sort of did an anti-Shyamalan right there by putting that on that box set. Well, Danny, speaking of that box set, I own that fucking box set because I am actual huge fan of that franchise. And there is a difference in quality between all of the movies, but there's a consistency with the characters. You know, you were talking a little bit about the casting of this reboot trilogy and also director. This new one that just came out is directed by Wes Ball, who I've never seen any of his movies before. Seems like he directed the movies that were in the Maze Runner franchise. And then I was like really impressed with the quality of the action in this movie, the way that they like would linger on the characters when they would have these sort of thoughtful moments. There were great moments where there's no dialogue whatsoever, which is what you need in this franchise. And that template was set with this reboot trilogy. With that being said, it's kind of funny because I was going to talk to you about some of the references to the other movies in the original franchise in this movie, because there are a bunch. But now you get to kind of watch that with fresh eyes, and we could talk about all those new ones. But believe me,
I definitely noticed. Even the way some shots are composed, some callbacks to the 1968 original movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those. For me, like, and I noticed it in the trailers where like just the walk along the shoreline at the end, and like I almost tricked myself into thinking they're going to pull back and the Statue of Liberty is going to be here at some point.
Yeah, I actually did think that in the theater. Yeah, I was
especially and we'll put up a spoiler warning when we get to like obviously plot details.
Yeah.
But there's moments towards the end where they're walking along the shore, and I'm like, here it comes, and then I'm like, oh, okay, all right, they're saving that. Okay, I got it. No, they didn't want to go too,
Yes.
They might have been accused of like just ripping from the original, but
yeah. So I mean, it's really, really interesting to me that you have not seen these sequels yet. But it's going to be so much fun talking about them, and that's what we're going to do this month on this channel. What I was going to say was that there's so much to the Planet of the Apes. The original movie came out in 1968. There are 5 movies in the original series, just like you said. There was a cartoon. There was a live-action TV show at one point. There's many comics by multiple publishers. Marvel has the rights right now. They're putting out a Planet of the Apes comic. So, I mean, this is a big franchise. People always talk about like Star Wars and Jaws being the first blockbusters, right? But like this was one of the first main like sci-fi franchises. And what's interesting, like with this new reboot series, is that with the Matt Reeves movies, they always kind of had like one established, well-known actor that everyone can get around, and then there's people that like the majority of the apes themselves, you don't know who's playing them. Like they're not really like big name stars, with the exception of Andy Serkis, who's Caesar. This time around, we have Owen Teague as Noah, and I would say that in the general public, he's a relative unknown. But for guys like you and me, he's a big deal. You know, he was in the Stand miniseries, the new one. He's in a bunch of indie things where he's, you know, one of the supporting characters. He was in this great movie. Did you see that movie Dear Leslie that came out that he's in, where he's like I can't remember that woman's name. She's amazing fucking actress.
I know exactly what you're talking about. She got nominated for Best Actress, and it, like, I think it rubbed people the wrong way because I think they like kind of petitioned for her.
Yeah.
But she's isn't she from Mandy? Andrea Rocks?
Absolutely. Yes. She's Nicolas Cage's girlfriend. 1000%. And the thing is, she's one of those actresses where, like, in any given movie, she seems like a completely different person. So you're like, that's that actress? That's the same person? She's in this amazing episode of Black Mirror, too, called Crocodile, which is like Crocodile
yes. That the one in the hotel room, right?
That's part of it. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, with Owen Teague, though, Sherry and I are actually big fans of him. And when I saw that he was the lead, I was like, oh, shit. You know, like, he's pretty awesome. Then we have Kevin Durand as Proximus Caesar. Now, do you know who Kevin Durand is, Danny?
Fuck yeah. I just saw Abigail. He's one of the main characters in Abigail.
Right.
Way back when he was the Blob in X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Right.
But he's always been a guy that I've noticed, even when he's been like a hulking background character in movies. Yeah. He just always has this incredible screen presence.
Yeah.
And, you know, with a movie like Abigail, he showed that he has like some good comic timing as well. I thought Proximo was fantastic. I thought I actually kind of wanted more Proximo. I saw where the ending was going because they had been building that particular moment for pretty much the whole movie. So I'd been waiting, and I kind of saw that coming, which it made sense. But I could have I hope that we find out more in the sequels about Proximo's reign and like what he was telling everyone. There's one of the main themes of this movie is like, it feels like the main theme of this movie is almost religious, and the idea that there's different sects of a religion or a belief system. And you have like Rocca, who's played by Peter Macon, who I believe is an Emmy winner. He was on Shameless and I haven't watched in a long time. But Rocca was my favorite character. I'm prone to orangutans. I'm sorry. I love Maurice in the reboot trilogy was one of my favorite characters, named for Maurice Evans, who plays Dr. Zaius in the original.
Yes.
And Rocca as this like wisdom spouting, almost exposition dumping orangutan, which I didn't mind because it just his voice is so good and it just felt natural. You know, when exposition feels natural, it's fine.
Yep.
And all of that felt very natural. The dialogue between Rocca and Noah, and then eventually, you know, Echo / May, as we'll find out. But the idea that like Rocca follows, he has like the necklace with the symbol of the original mirror from Caesar's attic in Rise of the Planet of the Apes that becomes like the symbol of the apes.
Right.
And he brings up, you know, and he tells Noah all about Caesar and Caesar's, you know, he seems to be a true follower of Caesar's ideas, you know, apes together strong and apes don't kill apes. But then you have Proximo as the king who is leading this like band of gorillas and chimps and other, you know, apes that are committing war crimes against other apes in the name
Yes.
of Caesar.
Yes.
And, it feels like, as a history teacher, it feels like this is, a Protestant Reformation situation where you have like competing forms of the same religion, whether it, and it could be Protestant versus Catholic, it could be, you know, uh, different sects of Judaism, different, Sunni, Shia, Muslims. Every
Sure.
religion has the different sects of them, and they all believe in the core ideas, and it's the outside beliefs, like those little ones that make up the big differences that lead to all the warfare and all the conflict. And it feels
Yeah.
really that that's what this movie is about. It's about a conflict, bless you, a
Thank
conflict
you.
between these two, the two different ways to interpret Caesar's teachings hundreds of years after Caesar is gone, hundreds of years after anybody who knew Caesar is gone. So now it's not even like, now you're just left to, interpret the oral histories.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
the apes are not like where they were in the original film, where they have their own scriptures. That's a big part of the original movie. Dr. Zaius being the head scientist and the defender of the faith, and the irony of those two, being in charge of both of those.
Right.
And uh and there's great scenes in this where humans, the few that can speak, are reading and educating Proximo about, the past. And he has this great line later on about how he wishes he could live forever so that he could gain all this information.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's like such a good character.
Yeah.
I started hoping that he would be around for more films.
Yeah. You can learn about evolution.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah, I loved him. And it's funny because when I was talking to my friend Jay after we left the theater, he called Proximo or Proximus, whatever his name is. He called
Proximus, Proximus.
I think it's either one, right? Whatever. But he called him a gorilla. And it's funny because when you do research into this movie, you see that they actually give like very detailed descriptions of what type of ape they are. And so he's actually a bonobo, which is a type of ape, right? So he's not a gorilla, or maybe that is like a type of gorilla. But I thought that just like his design, even though he's an animal, I mean, an animal that talks, he looked more like a horror movie creature, like with his crown. There's kind of a shot that you see a lot in the second trailer where it's at the end of the movie when he kind of like walks in front of the hangar door and like his eyes almost look like red and he's got his crown on, and it's like this very menacing, scary image. You feel his presence throughout the entire movie, even though he's only in a small portion of it. He's maybe in like, I don't know, 20% of it, or maybe like
Probably
25%
the
of it.
latter third of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, you brought up a lot of stuff there, and there is the idea of like the interpreting of Caesar's teachings, which it makes you feel sad when you're a fan of that original franchise. In that reboot franchise, when you watch that reboot franchise, you really feel Andy Serkis's suffering in every single movie. That there's the challenges of leadership in that second movie. There's of course like being an ape and having to be in this like sanctuary in the first movie. Then in the third movie with Woody Harrelson, it's like almost like biblical how Andy Serkis's Caesar is like kind of tortured, by nature and by Woody Harrelson. So when you see his teachings interpreted in this movie, you feel extra bad because you're like, oh man, Caesar was such a good guy and he was trying to do the right thing. And now these people are like quoting him. These apes are quoting him as they do horrible things to other apes. You're like, oh, this is so messed up. But one thing that I wanted you to bring up too is that the humans do play a pretty significant role in this movie. And there's more to them than you would suspect. When you see the girl, her name, I'm putting up the wrong fucking, that's the gorilla The girl is her name's Freya
Freya.
Allen. That's the actress, and then she plays May. So that's a spoiler in itself. But that's one of the great things was that Rocca, when he sees her, he calls her Nova, and then there's this great joke where he's like, "We call them all Novas, right?"
We call them all Nova.
Love that. Have you seen Freya Allen in anything else, or is this the first time you saw her?
I looked her up. So here's the crazy thing. I thought from the trailers that she was like 15 years old.
Yeah, she looked right.
And then in the movie, I'm like, oh, she's not 15, she's older. And then I looked up that she was she's in her early 20s. I think she's like 22, 23, and that she had been in The Witcher. And then I'm like, oh, so was she was probably naked in that. And
no.
And I'm like, I thought this girl was like a high school kid. Like, wait, what's happening? But no, I had not seen her. She's got a set of eyes on her, she's got these like incredibly blue, expressive eyes that you just kind of can't stop looking at her. And I know that must sound creepy, but it's not in that way at all.
Right.
And the spoiler, which I guess we'll put up a full spoiler warning now.
Yeah, spoilers, yeah.
When it's revealed that she can speak, I kind of felt like the movie wanted that to be a bigger moment than it was. And I didn't think it hit, obviously, the Caesar moment of Rise.
Totally agree.
But I did like that because I like that it kind of feels like the evolutionary wheel is starting to spin back. And
okay, Danny's gone. He was saying the evolutionary wheel is about to spin back. Hopefully he's going to pop back into this thread, but I could do the talking. So one of the things I was going to say was based on what Danny was talking about. He's going to totally pop in while I'm explaining this. But with the original Planet of the Apes movie with Charlton Heston, he's a human that gets lost in space and essentially travels through time and ends up in this future where, apes have taken over because humanity has destroyed itself. And there's the idea with this reboot franchise that we're still going to get that story. Oh, here he comes. All right. I kept going, my man, but you go ahead, make your point that you were going to make.
Oh, well, no, I just, war is where the virus kicks in, and we're now hundreds of years later, and it just feels like, the wheel of evolution is starting to spin back. At the end, we find out that there's obviously more humans that can speak and who have more access to technology, have more access to the use of satellites, and they're kind of calling out to the other humans to unite. And I think that puts the franchise, this new franchise, into a good space, because I didn't know how much more, especially with the way this movie ends, I don't know how much more they can do ape on ape. Like they've done, really, because of Koba. Dawn was ape versus human, but then ape versus ape. War was ape versus human. This is really the first movie where it's totally ape versus ape for the entire movie. And I just didn't, I think it works better if you have humans in the movie. And I think like building those interactions and those characters make for, like, again, I just rewatched the Charlton Heston original. Watching him act off of Maurice Evans as Dr. Zaius, Kim Hunter and Roddy McDowell as Cornelius and Zira, watching him interact with those apes is just amazing. It's fascinating. And it's the same thing watching Caesar come, to prominence. Whether it's with James Franco and John Lithgow in the first movie, or whether it's with oh God, who's the guy who played John Connor in Terminator Genesis? Because he's in Dawn.
Right. I was gonna say
Him and Kerry Russell.
Right. I was gonna say Matt Reeves, but that's the director. But I feel like his name is like that too. I'll look it up while
and you
you're
mentioned
talking.
Woody Harrelson. Like, there's always these great moments of like great act, and I always want, and I'm hoping that they do this if on like a 4K Blu-ray release, that they put the movie on with just the actors in like the motion capture.
Yep.
And I want to watch Freya Allen. I want to watch Freya Allen as May or Nova. And I want to watch her interact with Owen Teague and Peter Macon as just in the motion capture, bouncing around. I want to watch Kevin Durand interact with William H. Macy, who shows up as like a splendid surprise at the end.
Yes. That was kind of a shocker. Jason Clarke is the actor.
Jason Clarke. Yes.
Jason Clarke. So let's we can talk about William H. Macy for a second there too, and basically what's going on with Proximo. So the idea behind this movie, right?
Proximo.
I'm gonna fucking look this shit up too while we're talking too.
I'm sure it's Proximus because we've been calling him Proximo the whole time, so it makes sense.
That's kind of how it works, yeah. But anyway, with this movie, the idea is that there is this one tribe of apes, these descendants, Proximus Caesar. That's his name. I just looked it up.
Of course.
So there's this one tribe that has risen to power, and they claim to be like descendants of Caesar, and that they follow his teachings. And there is this one ape, his name is Proximus, and his goal is to use human technology to evolve apes, like to make them as powerful as humans were. And he has William H. Macy as a prisoner, and they're trying to get into this bunker where there's all this like military technology. Now, while this is going on, we find out that there are some humans that have sort of been kept safe from this virus that wiped out all of humanity, and it also made humans unable to speak. And there are like groups of humans that are still alive, but they send out teams to go like explore, go try to figure out ways to retake the planet. It's very similar to the show Fallout that me and Brian are covered on Comic Books Transformed. But we find out that this girl, May, she's one of those people. And through the first, I'd say like 30 to 40% of the movie, we think that she's one of these like mute human characters that we've seen in the original trilogy. But then there is that reveal that you talked about where she calls out to Noah. Now, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say that the opening scene where she is with her, not the opening scene, but when we see her with a group of humans who are all muted and the apes come and there's this big chase sequence, that feels directly inspired by the 1968 film when Charlton Heston and his two other astronauts come upon the other humans, and then the apes siege for the first time. That's where Charlton Heston gets shot in the throat, which is why he can't speak. He doesn't have his epic line, get your filthy paws off me, you damn dirty. That doesn't happen until the exact 1 hour mark of Planet of the Apes.
That's crazy.
Obviously, he's a vocal character when he's with his other astronauts, but once the apes siege, he's silent for nearly 30 minutes. And it's a good callback also.
Yeah. And I was thinking, I was a little bit worried that the humans in this movie were going to be like entirely mute, and that they were going to, just seem like these de-evolved people. But then you add this whole layer of like menace to humans in this. And I know you froze, but I just kept talking about how like the humans have this menace to them. I keep getting
a network lost thing. I think it's because I'm on the app instead of on the link that you sent me. So if I end up fading out, just know that I really enjoyed this movie and I can't wait for more of them. And but yeah, keep going.
Yeah. So Noah, I mean, not Noah. I'm sorry. May, you know, she seems like this mute human, and then we have this reveal that she actually is quite, you know, well read and like knows a lot about history and is on a mission. And she's got this dynamic to her where she's a bit of a menacing character. You know, you're rooting for her, but you're also like, oh, is she going to hurt the apes? Is she going to hurt Noah and his friends?
Yeah,
And you know what?
you hit it with menacing, because by the end of this movie, like, I kind of felt like I had completely turned on her character and was like, whoa, what the fuck? There's one particular moment at the very end where I was like, whoa, what the fuck?
Yep, I know that moment. Yeah. And we can talk about that when we get to the end, but I was going to say that for this movie, you know, essentially you're telling a brand new story, you know, like even though there's like echoes of the previous Planet of the Apes movies in this, it, you know, there's a new take, it's a new chapter of this reboot franchise. And it's what I like about this movie is that like everyone's actions of the main characters kind of influences what happens on a macro scale. So you have like Noah and his friends going and looking for these eagle eggs in the very beginning, because eagles are such a major part of their tribe, right? And like to come of age, to become like an adult ape, you have to find your eagle companion, right? Your eagle familiar. And in that search, they come across this cloth that has the smell of humans on it. They call them echoes. And basically, there's just this kind of back and forth where May is watching Noah. She's like kind of going into his village and like stealing things or like messing around with things. And then he's intrigued by her. And it just keeps escalating to the point where he has an egg, which is going to be his like eagle that he's bonded to. He goes to find her in this hut. She runs into him and shatters the egg. And then he's like, I have to go find a replacement. And that's essentially like the inciting incident that starts this whole thing, you know? And one last thing I want to say about May before I you know, pass the baton to you is I actually really liked that there was this kind of like built-in backstory for her and Proximus's people, to where they're already specifically looking just for her versus like that, you know, they think she's just a regular human and then she talks, then they're interested. I like that they were already looking for her by the time this movie started too. So yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I really liked that aspect of it, and it kind of fuels a lot of the movie. The movie felt like it almost felt episodic, where it's like you have your opening episode is like what you just described. You have Noah and his companions going on their coming of age journey. Noah, you know, can't figure out how to deal with the eagles, but his father is the chief of the eagle tribe.
Right.
And then after that inciting incident where the Proximus's apes show up and burn the village down, it becomes like a road movie where Noah is on his own. He meets up with Raka. They have this great extended sequence of traveling together and just kind of going over and, you know, doing very, as we mentioned earlier, very natural exposition about the world that we're living in and Caesar and Caesar's teachings. And then they meet May and that becomes a little trio, which leads to some action sequences, which are great. And then we get, after the bridge sequence, we go into the final act, which is obviously coming to Proximus, it getting introduced to the hatch, trying to find a way into the hatch, and figuring out what everybody's looking for. There was almost a part of me when May said that she was looking for a book. And there was part of me, and because of like this religious aspect to it, that thought like maybe she's looking for like a Bible or some kind of. I didn't realize she was looking for like an actual
hard drive.
Yeah, a hard drive. And I really like the scenes in the hatch and I love the moments building up to it. Like it, I wouldn't.
Man, this is a record of Danny freezing today. He wouldn't something, but now I'm going to insert what I was going to say along with what he was talking about. Like, oh, is he back?
Am I back?
Yes, you are. So you said I wouldn't, and then you froze.
I wouldn't say the movie does a lot to surprise you. I think a lot of the big sequences are set up, and then they pay off those setups. It's almost like the anti M. Night Shyamalan style of filmmaking. It's like, oh, they're gonna blow up the levee that
Like the dam,
keeps
yeah.
the water out.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the water is gonna rush in and drown this kingdom. They do that. They're gonna work their way into the hatch, and they're gonna use the weapons against them. Oh, that we got that. The eagles are gonna. We spend most of the movie where Noah can't get an eagle to bond with him. The eagle is eventually going to bond with him and help him, win at the end of the movie, and that happens. And that's not a bad thing. Sometimes, people accuse a movie or a property of being too predictable. If that's the way the story's going, then that's fine. And I think that, I liked that we got those beats, but then I also liked some of the character moments that are like we were saying earlier, May going from like this doe-eyed, like Echo character to suddenly she's this ruthless woman. She freaking shoots William H. Macy and dumps his body in the water.
No, she strangles him. She chokes him.
She outright murders William H. Macy because he's going to report back to Proximus.
Yeah.
And she's almost willing to, kill Noah later on. It leaves us in a very intriguing place, and I really like the juxtaposition of the very end of the movie where Noah is leading the other apes to look through the giant telescope at like the other world, and at the same time the humans are using that hard drive to relaunch centuries dead satellites to send messages to the other humans. And it puts us into a position where there's some exciting possibilities of what the next movies can be.
Yeah. Once we start talking about the original Planet of the Apes movies, you'll see the dynamic of like humans in those movies and what they're like to the apes. There's a different dynamic with the humans in this reboot franchise. The humans are like more menacing and scary in these movies than they are in the original ones, right? And in this, there is the idea at the very end that like, oh, the humans might come back and they might, be a challenge to the apes that are around, the scattered ape tribes. I was gonna say that the reason why Proximus and the humans like seem actually menacing in this movie is because of the way that it's directed. Like there's some sequences in this movie that once the action starts, they're pretty relentless. There's that attack from Proximus's forces on Noah's village, where like they're just going through the village. They're using these like electric prods on their fellow apes. They're like just killing them. Gorillas are like smashing apes with their fists. And we have this one sequence where Silva, who's like the main gorilla of Proximus's army, takes on Noah's father. And that's like this really brutal battle. And he like thinks that Noah's dead after that battle because Noah just falls, what seems like to his death. But there's basically like three. You kind of broke down the movie into segments, and there are like three main segments of the movie, like three acts, just as normal, and each of them seems to be bookmarked by a like battle sequence, right? Because there's like it's at the end of each sequence, right? So you have the attack on Noah's village. That's the end of sequence 1 or section 1. Then there's that sequence on the bridge, which is pretty intense when Rocca dies. That's sort of the end of the road trip segment. And
have you heard? So apparently, if you stay till the very end of the credits, the screen goes to black, and there's like an audible. There's no like post-credit scene, but there's an audible clue that Raka either may be alive or that he, you just hear something of Raka at the very end of the credits.
Yeah.
Now, if they brought him back, I would not be upset. He was my favorite part of the movie. But yes, it did feel like a kind of a definitive death at the moment, but we can hope.
Yeah, I mean, basically, he gets like sucked away into this roaring current, into the ocean, and you're like, oh shit, well, he's an ape, he's not going to be able to swim. Are like the last things that you hear is that him being like glob glob, like. But yeah, I would love for him to come back too, because he was like this super charming character. So I was just trying to think. Okay. There's one other thing I really wanted to mention before we kind of wrap this up, which is I talked about how great the action and the violence was in this movie, but also just the acting. Andy Serkis kind of created a science of motion capture performances. Like he's kind of like the template on how to do it, and he's Caesar throughout the original trilogy or reboot trilogy. I think that everyone does a fantastic job mimicking apes. You said that you want to see the footage of the behind the scenes with them wearing those suits. I would love to see that as well. But I mean, they are committed. They move like apes. They do all these gestures. Noah, this is one thing I kind of found is like a little bit of a frustration. The main character, when he talks, it's kind of drawn out. He'll be like, Eagle, I need to get, and you're kind of like, okay, I know you're going to say like 4 lines from now. Proximus talks much more quicker. When Noah talks, she's quicker. Nova. And then when Raka talks, he talks like he's much quicker too. But the main guy, there's sort of a delay in his delivery. And, but just the CGI too, and like the way their faces move, it's like, it's funny because when I was watching the trailers for this movie, this shows like what kind of movie this is. There was a trailer for Alien Romulus. And then there was a trailer for Mufasa. And it's like, are these like for the same audience? Like, who's this for, right? But the reason why I bring up the trailers is because it has that live action animal thing of the Lion King reboots. And these movies do this perfect thing where it's like they look like human characters talking, but then it also looks just like a fucking real orangutan, a real gorilla. It's amazing.
Yeah, Charlotte actually walked in last night while I was watching Planet of the Apes, the original, and she was like, the technology is so amazing today, but I actually like them better with like the makeup on. And I was like, it's completely different. I love the original movie, but I've said this for years, there's going to come a point where the Academy has to give Andy Serkis an Oscar.
Yeah.
Whether it is like a lifetime achievement award, because he is, and I don't think this is a debate. He's the greatest at what he does.
Yep.
In Hollywood ever. Yep. Like, it's like Weird Al Yankovic. Not everybody appreciates parody music, but he's the greatest in that style of all time. It's not disputed. And if you're one of those people who has a niche in an industry where you are clearly the greatest of all time, you should be celebrated for that.
Yeah.
And between Gollum and Caesar, he establishes over 6 movies 2 of the greatest characters of the last 30 years of cinema.
Yeah.
And yes, the motion capture looks great in this movie. And, a lot of people were like, oh, who the heck is Wes Ball? And, oh, God, the Maze Runner movies. Nobody was. But if you didn't know that Wes Ball of the Maze Runner did these, you would probably just assumed this was another Matt Reeves Apes movie.
Agreed.
And that is such a testament to the direction, to the motion capture, to the where we are with the technology. And it's funny you mentioned, because yes, I saw the Mufasa trailer, and it's literally night and day. It's like you're watching live action cartoons versus, never for 1 second does it look like I'm not looking at a bunch of apes in these movies.
Right.
And I just rewatched the reboot trilogy not long ago. Never for a second am I sitting there going, oh my God, this looks so stupid.
Right.
It looks unfucking believable.
Right.
And that's why back in 2011 I loved Rise so much. It blew me away. I wasn't ready for the level of technology that these movies bring us. And I really hope this movie does well. I really hope this movie, I know there's a lot of people on social media who are asking questions about why movies aren't making as much money as they used to. And, you know, a lot of people like to point the finger at the audience. Oh, you say you want this, but then you don't show it. All right. I hope this movie does well, because if this movie does well, then it will obviously generate more of these films. And if I can get a new Apes movie every 2 years, I'm going to be super excited, because this is 4 movies in this new, franchise. And, we like to wrap up reviews sometimes with rankings. I don't think there's a wrong one. I honestly don't. Like, this is one of those cases where if you watched this new movie and you said, holy shit, that movie blew me away, it's my favorite of these new Apes movies, I'm not going to debate you on that. If you say that Dawn, which I genuinely think Dawn might be the best movie of the original trilogy, is your favorite, or if War is your favorite, or if you love Rise, I think they're all fucking great. And
Agreed.
And it makes me so excited to, when we're done here, I'm probably going to finish watching Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and then who knows? They're all on Hulu. Maybe I'll just go down an Apes rabbit hole and get to, what is it? Conquest, Battle for, Escape from.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. You got them all. You got them all right there. Yeah. And they're
one
all
thing
good.
One thing I think everyone can agree with: the Tim Burton, Mark Wahlberg one is at the bottom of everybody's list.
I knew that was coming. Yeah.
Even though the makeup in that movie looked amazing. That's the one thing you can't take away from that movie. The Tim Roth, Michael Clark Duncan, Helena Bonham Carter, the apes in that movie looked great. It's just that the movie is
right. And you know what? Those characters played by those actors are good too, especially Tim Roth as like the main bad guy. I thought he was good. But yeah, it's just a hokey movie with Mark Wahlberg as the lead. So Danny and I are going to cover some more Planet of the Apes movies. We're going to cover the originals too. I think that was a great idea on his part. But Danny, I think that might be because you're not thinking about something that's coming out on Sunday. Do you know what's coming out on Sunday?
No. Oh, is it Interview with a Vampire?
It's Interview with the Vampire. Yes. So I think that Danny and I are probably going to be covering that like on a weekly basis, but we can squeeze in some apes too. So
if we're gonna squeeze. I also, before we end, your bottom line says, will this eventually lead to Planet of the Apes 1968? I just watched a really good I think it's Screen Crush, who does like the movies explained videos. And they went into the ending of this movie. And if you go back to Rise, there's moments in Rise where they talk about that there was an Icarus launch and astronauts are lost in space.
Lost in space, yep.
And that there's a theory that at the end, looking through the telescope, that this could lead to the astronauts, Taylor, Charlton Heston's character from the original movie, somehow showing up in this now distant future back on Earth. And that would be a way for this new trilogy to end. And if they're going to go full convergence of timelines and franchises, that's going to be fucking epic. I can't wait for that. I don't know if the Screen Crush video is pretty good. You guys check that out. But yeah. Interview with a Vampire. I'm going to have shorts for I already have a short for Kingdom and a short for Rise. I'm going to have a Dawn and a War short by the time this video goes live on Monday.
Nice.
And then, yeah, we can cover the original films. I could talk about Apes for a long time.
Yes. It's funny, Danny, because the first movie in this new reboot franchise is all about how the apes come to power. I mean, really, that's what that first trilogy is about how the apes come to power, how it becomes the Planet of the Apes, right? The actual cause of the apes rising in power in this new franchise is different from what happens in the original franchise, so that's where there could be contradictions. But when you watch some of the later movies, I think you're going to get a chuckle out of why the apes actually come to power. Yeah. Why the apes become intelligent. You'll see. I can't wait to talk about that with you. But yeah, so Danny said what's on our channel. Make sure that you subscribed if you have not. You've watched this video all the way to the end here. We love y'all. Give Danny some delayed birthday love over here by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and Danny and I will be back with some vampire loving next week. So we'll see y'all.